Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, our former speaker, Sarah. That was fascinating, and what you're doing there, I think, is really, really important for the future, but I suspect will be really frustrating in the next couple of years. So I'm going to switch gears a bit and address critical choices and look at research and future workforce, which I think are very much tied together. Let's see if I can get this to go. Yep. So I want to look at innovative models for future collaborations. And I think such collaborations need to include partnerships with world-class research groups to enable better links along the entire value chain from exploration, production, and closure. And really importantly, research in the future has to address the social aspects, which are really some of the most critical things in the mineral industry today. So important areas for collaborative research from my point of view, from talking to many of our industry partners and other companies at meetings and in all sorts of venues over the last couple of years, is in the exploration space, we need much improved understanding of the geological architecture of both mineralized and critically barren areas for better targeting across the entire exploration ecosystem. We need better exploration vectoring tools and technologies, and not just sort of the traditional ones in geochemistry and geophysics, but increasingly how we use all the data analytical skills that are just exploding around us in terms of machine learning and artificial intelligence. Clearly, we need to continue the work that's been happening in the last 2 decades on understanding the elemental and mineralogical characterization of both the concentrates where we get the elements of interest and the wastes that are produced as we do this, to see if there are any other things we can get out of those wastes that have beneficial and economic impact, or are there things in those wastes that are of environmental concern. And then finally, as I mentioned before, with all this research, we have to be looking at social sciences, humanities, and in fact the arts to enable a step change in public perception and understanding of the earth resources sector, and importantly at the same time, help us develop a new industry workforce, which also has this view about the importance of societal concerns. So I shamelessly stole this slide from Dr. Paul Agnew, formerly of Rio, at a meeting last year, the Amira meeting in London. And he actually looked at workforce, and I thought what he said was really good, so I'm going to steal it. He thought the workforce in the future in the mineral sector, the team would comprise sort of the usual suspects in the geoscience realm. So geologists, geophysicists, and geochemists. But the team would also have to include social scientists, community and traditional owners, environmental scientists, material scientists, mineralogists, which I actually would have put with the original team, metallurgists and geometallurgists, I also would have put with the original team, chemical engineers, data scientists, data engineers, and these should be with the original geoscience team and others, mining engineers, and a whole series of automation and mechatronics engineers. And the work he thought would be basically identify where a company or companies can partner with government and communities, understand what community needs and values are, do comprehensive resource and waste characterization, and do complex extraction simulation and process optimization, as well as understanding and modeling the carbon and ecological footprints of any projects from exploration through to closure. And finally, waste utilization and legacy valuation. So to me, he was dead on what we need in the workforce. What you see is it's a very broad workforce. So rather than the traditional way of building a workforce, which we're doing now, which is siloed, we train geologists, we train chemists, we train material scientists. We really need to look at building a multidisciplinary workforce for ensuring success of the industry. And we do that by doing research and doing education in multidisciplinary teams. So the vision I would say that we should look at the future is a tree. And to get a strong, secure minerals industry tree, we need deep roots. And the tap roots are traditional things, mining engineering, geometallurgy, geoscience. But the breadth of the root system to actually hold it in place and get all the nutrients it needs includes things like material science, chemical engineering, data analytics, AI, social sciences, humanities, and policy, and importantly, ethics. So, how do we marry the needs for both research and a new workforce? And the obvious way is to work with appropriate partners. And so here I'm going to be shamelessly actually talking about my center, which is ICRAG. It's a research center in applied geosciences. We develop innovative science and technology to better understand the Earth's past, present, and future, and how people perceive Earth resources. We have a broad research portfolio, obviously Earth resources, which this audience would be most in tune with, but we also do a lot of work in Earth system change and Earth science and society. We collaborate with a whole range of industry partners in the minerals sector and beyond in renewable energy, et cetera. And we do have a focus on the global minerals industry, looking primarily at mineral exploration and production, developing new vectoring technologies, doing 3 and 4D subsurface modeling, petrophysical characterization, data analytics, geometallurgy. We also have a focus on critical raw materials by developing new ore deposit models for these elements and looking at where they are, their potential for both current and future deposits and in historic and present day wastes. Finally, we look at building construction materials, and with all of the above, we envision and examine the social and environmental issues associated with them. So I hope we could be a partner of choice for people listening on this call. We want to do collaborative research across the minerals value chain from exploration to closure. We do both single and multi-stake projects. You'd have access to world-class researchers and analytical facilities. We do embedded research. We design projects to actually match industry timeframes. And a limited time offer, we can leverage your investment. For the next year and a half, we can match industry research funds euro for euro. So you put in €1, we'll put in €1 as well. So I would say the time to invest in innovative partnerships for critical choices is now. That is the critical choice. Why now? The cost of investment is low at the moment. Reducing future business risk, especially in ESG, has never been more important. This prepares you for the future. And importantly, right now, it's counter-cyclical to the current industry climate. So while everybody is hunkering down and not doing a lot of things, actually investing relatively few research dollars can get you very large paybacks and actually put you in the right place for the future. Happy to take questions. Thank you very much. Thanks, Sarah.
Murray, as always, absolutely fantastic. Everyone, please, a round of applause for the fantastic Murray Hitzman. Fantastic. Excellent. So Murray, we've got a couple of questions that have come in for you in the chat. But the first one is, you have put on the table the most amazing business case, or value case, I should say, with regards to investing in these opportunities as you've articulated. Is the funding coming? And if not, why not?
So it's hard to say. I just actually have talked to industry about this in the last week to 10 days, and I have had no offers yet. Let me put it that way. I have had several expressions of interest. I will not name names, but some of them have come from players that I would not have expected, but ones who are looking to the future as opposed to what's happening exactly now in the business cycle. Some of the others that I would have thought would have jumped at it don't seem to have. So that's always interesting, and we'll figure it out in the next couple of weeks, why this is. This obviously doesn't just apply to the minerals industry. We're obviously talking to other industries like the renewable energy sector, the environmental sector, the risk sector, i.e. insurance, et cetera. We'll see what happens with those industries too. We haven't made those overtures yet, right? So it's going to be an interesting competition to see who wins, because I have 4.7 million euro that I can spend, and I can only spend it the next year and a half. So who's going to get most of it? That'll be very interesting to see.
Before you all rush, by the way, in terms of putting your hand up and saying, I'll help you spend 4.7 million. That's fantastic. With regards to this, Murray, there's a question here from Andy in the chat. And Andy asks, how can we build these multidisciplinary teams in the junior mining sector when all the incentives are driving atomization of the sector into tiny entities with very few targets each?
Right. So that is an issue. And I've worked in the junior sector, so I'm very well aware of this. I think in an area like that, juniors, one, they have to be somewhat trusting, which is always hard in our business. They have to work on things that are not incredibly competitive for them, so something that actually gives broad value to the group. So it could be, for instance, broader understanding of a region, right? Or broader understanding of a basket of technologies for finding a particular kind of deposit, which could be employed anywhere by anybody, right? Certainly on the social side, oh God, they all have exactly the same sorts of problems. Each one is individually different, but looking at it more broadly is something I would think every junior should. Boy, they don't need much money to try and get into that game, because if they don't do it, they're going to get killed. That's the way I would think about it. I think multi-partner collaborations are great. I mean, personally, they're a pain in the ass for us, right? Because we have to sign all these things, it takes forever. But the results are actually usually really good. We're doing a couple of them now. One in petrophysics, which is great, where we're just getting lots and lots of petrophysical data in the Irish ore field. No one's ever had it. Everybody can use it with whatever geophysical data set they have, right? So it'll be great to get all this data put into one basket that they all can use at the same time. So those sorts of projects, I think, we can do.
And so, Murray, just in terms of attracting funding, do you find people are more interested in funding the kind of the technical or the physical sciences or the social sciences? My experience is that a lot of the money tends to come in on the physical science side, and everyone goes, oh, but you also have to do some social science. And it's very dangerous to just kind of tack on a random project on the edge rather than truly integrate them together. What do you think?
So I totally agree with you. And you know that because we've worked on a couple together. I think, you need to tack the thing on because it's so important anyway. It has to be done. At the same time, what's really needed is really focused research on the social side, right? And I can tell you that's very hard to attract funding for, because while every company says they're doing it, one, they're not. Two, they're not doing it well. And if you ask the people who really know in the companies, they'll actually agree with that. And three, we can just see it in the headlines, right? But it's scary for them. It's scary because they don't know what we're going to find. And we could find things that they don't like. In fact, we probably will, right? But they need to know that so they don't make the same mistake going forward. Because in my career, I have looked at projects coming up and I can tell you that one's going to fail. I know it's going to fail, right? It's going to fail socially. And I'm sure a lot of you on this call can point to others that you've seen that too. We should be at least able to look together and figure out how not to do those going forward, right? That's a reasonable research program in and of itself.
Murray, perhaps we need the Murray filter or something like that. That would catch some of those projects nice and early. Murray, we've got another question in the chat that's come in from Matt, who asks, collaboration on research in oil and gas has always seemed a lot more open. Why is minerals so far behind? Is that deposits location specific?
Part of it is that the mineral, well, several answers since I've worked in both industries. One, the mining industry is just more conservative, period. And it's always been more, in many ways, technologically conservative. It's just the way the business is. It also tends to be more paranoid, of individual projects, because really and truly, oil and gas is a very simple system, which we understand quite well. And the technologies, once you develop it in oil and gas, can be used across many things. Minerals are much more specific, the deposit types, the places. And so it is really often, there can be real competitive advantage, which can be given away, right? So I think that those combination of things make it just a more difficult space in which to do it.
Yeah. And I mean, with all of this, Murray, and I'm loving the fact that we always get into trouble by saying that oil and gas is simple, because they don't like being told that. It's very, very complicated, and they're very clever people, but mining is quite difficult in terms of understanding what's going on potentially under the ground. I've got another question for you, Murray, that's come in on YouTube. And the question is, as one of the, so it's from an individual who is one of the few accredited gemologists in Malawi and Africa as a whole, with an interest in gemstones and critical mineral assets. And they're asking, okay, how can we collaborate on R&D with people in Europe?
That's a really good question. It'll depend on where they specifically are. Certainly, if they're involved in a company, if they have any capital whatsoever, there are many places like mine, but others, where there's ways of matching funds or getting additional funding into research. If they're an academic institution, again, there are ways of writing collaborative research agreements with European entities, North American entities, Australian entities, South African entities, to actually, bring in some money to actually help with that research as well. So I think there are ways. It's just making the contacts that allow it to happen. But doing it, if he wants to, is somebody just going to invest for free there? Unless there's an obvious economic input, probably from an external company that would help do it, the answer is going to be it's going to be tough.
Okay, so hopefully that answers your question in YouTube. Thank you, Murray. And then
have them contact me. I'll talk to them.
There you go. Contact Murray Hitzman. We will be able to put you in contact. And also as well, I know that the Society for Economic Geologists have got their big conference, or their annual conference, taking place in Windhoek in Namibia later on this year. I think it starts on the 27th of September. And this is something here where they're very, very keen to be able to support as many people from across Africa to attend. So if you're interested in coming and mingling with geoscientists really from across the world, then that might be something that you could look into as well. And again, reach out, and I'm sure we can try and put you in contact with where those travel funds, for example, I hope anyway, are being put together at the moment. So thank you very much for our lovely friend on YouTube. Murray, one final question that is coming basically both from Mark and Andy in the chat. And Mark is asking, who are the boundary spanners? And I think by that, we don't mean spanners as in the tool, we mean as in spanning boundaries. Mark, correct me here if I'm wrong. So who are the people who are spanning boundaries, and how can we support them in making knowledge more actionable in sustainability fields? And further to this, what value does the mining sector attach to generalists?
Okay, let me try and do the second one first, and then go to the first, which is, I think, even more important. I think the mining sector actually does value generalists, and I think especially in the junior mining sector, for the reason that they usually don't have many people, so they need some people who can do everything. And generalists are people who really can pull things together, so that actually can be really good. Repeat the first part again so I don't screw it up really fast. Can you?
The second one or the first one?
The first part of the question.
Who are boundary spanners?
Got it.
And how can we support them in making knowledge more actionable in sustainability fields?
Right. So there are many of them. Satarla, who's putting this on, is one. So I'll give you a plug here, but it's true. I hope our group is one too. There are several other research groups around the world. University of Queensland stands out. A couple of others. There are groups within companies which are doing it, but obviously doing it in an enclosed and usually not very public way. I can't think of many governments that are actually doing it well, unfortunately, but hopefully some of them are starting to move that direction. I think the EU believes in that and is trying to get there. Again, they're not there yet, but the fact that they are actually putting their money where their ideas are suggests that sometime in the next decade or two, we actually might have many more groups that actually do that.
Awesome. There we go. So Mark, I know that you've referenced a paper there in the chat to broaden out this conversation as well, which is absolutely fantastic. So with that, everybody, please put your hands together for the phenomenal Murray Hitzman. Thank you very much. Thanks, Murray.